important moments, and when you couldn't be there in person, you made us feel you were right beside us. You reminded us that family is not part of life, it is life. You taught us to dream big but stay grounded. You showed us that compassion is a strength, that speaking the truth is an obligation, and that service to others is the greatest clarion call. We'll miss writing with you, laughing with you, sitting with you whenever you had a lull in your schedule. We'll miss talking about our future, hearing your advice, you driving us to school all the time, especially when we had exams. Daddy, why did you have to leave us so soon? Never in a million years could we have imagined you'd leave us. You lived your life like a race, always trying to do more, love more, and share more. We really thought you'd live forever because your light was so bright it could never go out. Amani, why have you done this to us? We absolutely cannot believe we will never see you again, never hold your hand, never sit with you at night and talk, never laugh with you, never see the many stickers you would always use to send us. Who we call in the middle of the night when no one else is awake and we have questions. Who will have all the answers to our problems. Who will conduct experiments at home just because you knew would study it that year. Who else would fill the bathtub with our toys and objects just to teach us Archimedes' principle? We have lost greatly. You are irreplaceable, Eduardo. We are pained, but even in our pain, we choose to hold on to your legacy and take consolation in the fact that you are resting in the bosom of the Almighty God. We'll carry forward your values, live with your compassion, and let your light shine through us. Though you are gone from sight, you remain forever in our hearts, our Father, our friend, our hero. Rest well, Eduardo. Your race is done, but your impact will never end.
It's a very sad moment, but one that also caused us all to reflect and then acknowledge the contribution of these 8 gallant heroes to this country. And that chorus that ran through everyone who has been speaking about this tragic incident is that their death should not be in vain. Ghana has bid a final farewell to 6 of the 8 victims. That was yesterday in that August 6 helicopter crash as they were laid to rest with full military honors at the military cemetery in Chado here in Accra. This solemn state funeral, which was held at the Black Star Square yesterday, drew thousands of mourners, both in person and also those who followed virtually. And all what was on the minds of the people who are gathered there was how the death of these 8 gallant Ghanaians in the line of duty would make meaning. President John Mahama has approved the posthumous promotion of the 3 Ghana Armed Forces personnel who perished in this August 6 helicopter crash. Now, the question as well that's been asked is that as we mourn, we've gone to lay flowers, read tributes. These families have to live. So there's been proposals beyond what the president has talked about, the setting up of a fund to take care of the children of these fallen heroes. There has to be a state-led, more institutionalized approach to helping and sustaining the welfare of these families. And that's public servants who die in the line of duty. What happens to their families afterwards? Well, we'll have a conversation this morning. And linked to this is the fight against Galamsey, illegal mining. The finance minister as well, that's Dr. Kasiela Toforsin, was quite clear during the reading of the budget, measures that have been put in place as well. This week, we heard the Foreign Affairs Minister, Samuel Okudzeto Ablakwa, talk about the commitment by the president to ruthlessly deal with Galamsey as a result of this particular incident. And this is one of the major expectations of government as a result of this incident. We saw this week the IGP's Galamsey task force or anti-Galamsey task force attacked by residents in a community where illegal mining was taking place. What is happening and why are these persons getting emboldened and acting with impunity to the extent of attacking some of the personnel of this task force that was set up by the IGP? We would have a conversation this morning because this is not the first time this has happened. You recall what happened in the case of Dr. Hannah-Bishop, together with some other members of that same task force who were literally held hostage not too long ago. So what is happening and what has to be done to deal with this impunity that is growing in these areas where Galamsey is taking place? We would have a conversation this morning here on Key Point. As always, you're an integral part of the conversation. There are so many ways that you can join us and let your voice be heard. My name is Alfred Ocansey. We will be back shortly after this quick break. My guest will join me. The conversation starts right after this. Stay with us.
When we come together,
Reporting from the Takoradi Market Circle.
From the heart of the Upper West Regional Capital.
From the heart of the Ashanti Kingdom.
Reporting from Sunyani.
From the Central Business District of Navrongo.
The parliamentarians are on recess.
This is where it all unfolds. The moments that potentially alters the course of our nation and the world. These are the individuals we recognize, the voices we amplify, who appears on screen and who contributes behind the scenes. With professionalism at our core, we bring you news you can trust, impact journalism that makes a difference. This illustrates how diverse perspectives enhance our strength and reinforces our mission. This is 3 News, leaders in breaking news, exclusive interviews, facts and analysis on TV, radio, online and digital. 3 News, first in news.
Grief can sometimes leave us feeling helpless and disempowered, but we're far from that. So it is with all this in mind that I would like today to announce the government's decisions to honor the service of these individuals and secure the futures of those they left behind. I humbly request the spirit of compassion that is the hallmark of our nation for these bereaved families. Promotions in our armed forces are never given lightly, and posthumous promotions are the highest mark of respect for duty performed even unto death. Accordingly, I have approved the following. Squadron Leader Peter Bafemi Anala is promoted to the rank of Wing Commander. Flying Officer Manan Chum Ampedu is promoted to the rank of Flight Lieutenant. Sergeant Ernest Adomensa is promoted to the rank of Flight Sergeant. These are not just symbolic gestures. They represent the rightful place these officers have earned in our Republic's roll of honor, and the benefits due to their families will be reflected in these new ranks. The Chief of the Defense Staff will oversee the ceremonial presentation of the posthumous promotion insignias to their families. Our other colleagues who were civilians will be posthumously recognized at the next National Honors Ceremony. The next decision that the government has made is for the creation of a Children's Support Fund for the children of the victims of the 6th August helicopter crash. The purpose of this fund is clear. It is to ensure that the children left behind will never be deprived of the opportunities, the care, and the security that their parents worked so hard to provide for them. We Ghanaians live in a culture that upholds collective responsibility, especially where community and family are concerned. Think about it. How often do we meet one another and ask about their child, and in so doing, claim that child as ours? It is common to hear us say, "How is my daughter?" or "How is our small boy?" We take on the responsibility of raising the children of our relatives who are not as financially capable as us.
2 months ago,
when you held my hand in the delivery room through the birth of our beautiful baby girl, Winle Weswamu Anala. We had new hope for our future and expectations for our family and the life we wanted her to have. I expected you to stay for at least a month to help settle into our new reality. But for the love you had for our country, you had only just a week to spend with us. Before you left, Winle held you back for an extra week because she wasn't feeling well. Now I know why she was holding you back from returning to Ghana. But for your dedication to your work, you had to make the most difficult sacrifice to go and serve your country, leaving behind a sick new baby and a mother who was still healing. Peter, 2 weeks only. Oh, what 2 weeks those were.
And that's what those tributes, recalling those last moments of now squadron leader Peter Anala there, his wife. Now, we hear the president talk about the measures that have been put in place as well to posthumously promote and then also recognize the civilians who died in the line of duty. This morning, a number of things have been done. And because of this disaster that we were hit with, we're not going to be doing poll tracker as you know it, but then we'll do it in a different form, just recalling the events and how things have played out. As we do know, there was a report that a black box has been retrieved. It's the aftermath of this helicopter. Now, we'll be finding out whether what was retrieved is actually a black box in the real sense of the word, because there's some clarity that has to be given. And in fact, this week, there's been some conversation going on as to whether what was retrieved from this Z9 helicopter is actually a black box. We do know that there's DNA forensics as well that has been done to identify the persons and then confirm that these are the individuals who were on this helicopter, and indeed they were part of the casualty that we recalled or counted on that particular day. So all 8 of them, the identities have been confirmed. We also do know that there are some other forensic investigation that's ongoing beyond just the DNA forensics as well. That is a conversation that we would have this morning. What kind or other forms of investigation will have to take place, even beyond the information on this equipment or black box, as you want to call it, any equipment that recorded any form of conversation or information even before the crash. There has to be a thorough accident, the reconstruction of that particular site, and as to how that act of the residents taking some of these debris of the helicopter could impact on what we are faced with right now. As a result of that, there's been a cash reward that has been put in place to encourage some of the residents of this Brofio Sikaman area who took some of the debris of this crashed helicopter home to return them, because it is crucial to this part of the investigation and what has been going on so far. That is the question that we are going to also get into this morning. We do know that the crash point, as far as information has been made available, was around 13 kilometers from where this accident was supposed to take. In fact, this accident happened or was recorded. What you're seeing right now, put together by a research team, Wisdom Safo and the team, this tracks the information as we have it. The Ghana Armed Forces' own statement indicated that this helicopter took off from Accra at 9:12 a.m. So that's the the actual time of takeoff. The expected time of arrival, give or take, all things being equal, was supposed to be around a little over 10 a.m. that particular morning. Per the protocols of the Ghana Civil Aviation Authority and other safety measures, this search and rescue procedure should have been triggered 30 minutes after there was no contact with the helicopter. We'll be finding out if indeed, if that protocol was triggered or put in place, what could have been done differently, especially when we got to know that this happened 13 kilometers away from the location where this helicopter was to land, meaning that they had done majority of the trip, right? And this Ocansey Lincoln Stadium, where this helicopter was reported to be the place of landing, either that place or that park where this event was taking place. Now, I want you to take a look at the Google Map location, what we took from Google Earth, the specific area of the Ocansey Lincoln Sports Stadium, where this helicopter was scheduled to land. And it gives you a clear idea of why questions have been raised as to what exactly could have been done differently, or what caused this particular accident or this crash, as we have seen, and what has to go into the investigation, especially questions about the crash site, what has been done at the crash site, questions also about whether or not there was any information at the time. With this search and rescue protocol in place, and whether it was triggered as well. This is the Dampier Rainforest, is where we understand this unfortunate incident took place. This, what you're seeing on the screen, is the Lincoln Stadium, the expected landing place of this helicopter, which was 13 kilometers away from the crash site in this Dampier Range Forest Reserve near Brofudru, Sikaman, in the Ashanti region. This was just to give you a clear idea of how the place looks from the Google Earth perspective. We give you a mind's eye of how this trip that never ended was supposed to have ended. Unfortunately, we're having to deal with 8 lives lost as a result of this. There are a number of questions on the minds of many, which we're going to try to seek answers this morning. And these are the questions and the matter of investigation and the transparency of the investigation itself. Are we going to handle this as one top secret investigation, or ensure full transparency with the public being carried along? Now, there are questions as to the extent of the transparency that is being demanded as well, because it's not everything that can be put in the public domain. Second question, this search and rescue protocol compliance. Was this SAR action triggered within the required 30 minutes after no contact? Also, questions about the aircraft worthiness and the airworthiness of this Z9. There's one person who is joining us this morning who knows and understands the workings of this particular helicopter and the exact duty, the function that it was supposed to play in our defense architecture as a country. With this foundation laid and this is going to be a forward-looking, progressive conversation because beyond the mourning and the wailing, answers must be given. Joining me in the studio this morning is Colonel Festus Abuaji. He is a retired security officer. He served his country well and has also been contributing to the development of this country in many ways. Colonel Festus Abuaji, retired security expert, thank you so much for joining us. Good morning to you. Hello, Colonel, good morning.
Good morning.
And thank you so much. Thank you very much for joining us. Also joining us this morning is Kofi Bentil, is the Vice President of policy think tank Imani Africa, and also a private legal practitioner. Mr. Bentil, good morning. Welcome.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
So this is your first time being here on Key Point. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Also joining us for the first time in a long while, Emmanuel Bombande is a former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister and an expert in mediation and peace building. So, Bombande, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thanks for inviting me.
Perfect. Also with us this morning is the CEO of the Ghana Shippers Authority, Professor of Political Science, Professor Ransford Jampo. Good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. No preliminary comments today because I'm still mourning.
Indeed, and that's very well understood. And that leads us straight into what the conversation is for the morning. I'll start off with you, Mr. Bonde, because a number of us have had the opportunity to also talk about this tragic incident and also paying tribute to the fallen heroes. But I haven't heard you publicly make your position clear on this. So please, initial.
Yes, so let me take this opportunity and with your kind invitation to express my profound condolences to our fallen, gallant servicemen, our comrades, and indeed our heroes. This hit me at a very bad time. I was working in one of our sister African countries, facilitating dialogue with high-level political leaders with that country preparing for elections. And I was 2 hours ahead of Ghana. And I thought I first saw just the description of something that was not specific. People were literally like exclaiming, "What?" And then I shut my phone and went into this dialogue that I was facilitating. Then later on, I started to get snippets. And strangely, it was the people I was working with who were following and rather updating me about the tragedy that had befallen my country. And it affected my day, it affected the way and manner I could proceed. And let me say that it dawned on me that when collectively we are hit by such tragic news that begins to unfold and we are together, a bond of solidarity probably helps a lot to try and understand what is happening, more than when you are out alone and lost in what you might describe as a situation in which you are a stranger in a different land. And I recall that day to be very, very difficult. And since I came back, I've been following. Whilst I was out, I've been following. And all I can say is to all of you who have been very active in trying to bring, in my view, the type of conversation that makes all of Ghana to make meaning and to have sense of what happened is very, very important for our healing, for the healing of the immediate family, the extended family, and all the friends, and to all of us collectively. And I'm sure as we go forward, I'll be able to talk about how this type of tragedy, as all of you have called, beginning with the president, It's the new call for a new sense of national unity, the type of unity that goes beyond just talking about unity, but trying to look at how we do things differently now in our politics, in the way we fight against corruption, and in the way the effort of nation building continues to progress in a way that holds all of us together and binds us together as a country. Thank you so much.
And I do thank you very much for sharing those words in honor of the heroes that we have lost. Now, this week we saw a number of things. The Chief of Defense Staff gave an update, or they responded to some questions for the first time in public about this tragic incident. But first of all, about it, we do know a number of things. That this helicopter was expected to land at the Lincoln Stadium. We'll show the Lincoln Stadium, the expected landing point on the screen. Also, the crash point was around 13 kilometers from this particular Lincoln Stadium. So they had covered most part of the trip. And this helicopter crashed into a mountain 725 feet high, correct?
Approximately.
Approximately. Now, at what time was this search and rescue protocol supposed to kick in? And from your own reading of how things played out, did it kick in within this period?
First of all, let me follow in the good steps of my brother Emmanuel. And because I've not been here since the story broke, the tragic incident, I want to use the opportunity once again to express very sincere condolences to the bereaved families. And I think we saw some of them, at the funeral yesterday. And by extension to the entire nation. It's a bit early to jump to the recovery phase, which is what you are talking about, or the search and rescue followed by the recovery. You may permit me,
please,
to explain that the type of helicopter that we call the Z9s, which came into the country in 2015, were initially based in Accra Air Force Base.
Right.
In 2019, the Air Force Chief of Staff, or Chief of Air Staff, decided to send them to Takoradi as their home. So whether they are flying or not flying, they are based at Takoradi, which supposes that the plane had left Takoradi. We know that it left Takoradi on 2nd August on a Medivac, not that it flew empty. Right. It brought a patient to Accra. But because there was a mission, a VIP mission on the 6th, all three of them who had come with a plane from Takoradi stayed in Accra. This would suggest that the plane, as of the 2nd, was airworthy.
Right, as of the 2nd of August.
Yes. Then, as you said, 12 minutes after 9 a.m. on the 6th, it took off. Some of the conversation in the media spaces is that it went off radar, and therefore something might have happened. When a plane goes off radar, it does not mean that it was encountering an emergency. All it means is that based on the location of the flight vis-a-vis the air control tower, the radar, which is line of sight, cannot find the plane. It cannot, see the plane.
So it doesn't necessarily mean that it could have crashed.
It doesn't necessarily mean that it was under stress, had crashed, or whatever it is.
Or had many mechanical.
But I'm saying let's use the empirical evidence and contextualize the idea of flying or going off the radar. It happened around 14 minutes after takeoff, 0926. But it did not happen anywhere in the eastern region or the southern part of Ashanti region. The impact happened 27 minutes later. So for 27 minutes, this Z9 was flying. All of us are Ghanaians. We know that between Accra and Obuasi, there are several towns and villages, including my own Jasua and Konongo. If indeed during the 27 minutes, the Z9 was under stress, the pilot, like on the 11th at Nkoko, would have found some open place
like a
in
school
the
park or something.
several towns and villages along the path to land. So I'm trying to suggest to Ghanaians that this idea that some people are, pejorative, whatever it is, in the media spaces, though the plane had a hazard and so on, it's not very likely. At least not during the 27 minutes.
I see.
So that brings us to the impact zone, which we know is a hill range.
Yes.
Now we say a hill range, but it's a series of ridges. It's not just one Dampier range. There are probably a couple of other ridges. When I checked yesterday again on Mercator, which is like Google, Dampier is on the northern side, Sikama is on the northern side of Dampier. But we were expecting that the plane was flying from Accra. So the impact, if at all, should have happened on the southern side of the range. Well, maybe it did, maybe it did not, but probably Dampier was the closest, and you could only access it from the northern side.
Right.
All of this suggests that the terrain, as I've been saying, was not a walk in the park. On this set here, a few days ago, people were saying that why didn't the Ghana Armed Forces get to the impact site within 1 hour? And for that matter, therefore, the Ghana Armed Forces is useless. Let me give you a bit of the time and space calculations. From Dampier, if you talk to those who went up there, including Ibrahim Abubakar, from Sikaman to the impact site is 1.5 hours to 2 hours climbing. I am told that several people who came with the regional minister from Obuasi and attempted to get there gave up and went back to the village. So it's not an impact site where, like here, you just take your bags and start walking. You are climbing. And if you have been in a hilly area, your knees will be buckling like that. By 12:40, the lead elements, military, from the forward operating base in Obuasi, had reached Sikamai by 12:40 hours. Now again, we are not talking quantum mechanics. So from Obuasi to Sikamai, you cannot just get the warning and then immediately be at Sikamai. It took them some time. I don't know when they got the warning, whatever it is, but by 12:40 they were there. Shortly before 2 o'clock, the military was at the impact site. Remember, it takes 1 hour, 30 minutes to 2 hours from Sikaman village to get there. So those who sat here and were saying that, why wasn't the armed forces able to get there within 1 hour? Excuse my language, did not know what they were talking about. You see what I mean? That is why the CDS said that under the circumstances, we did our best with whatever resources that we had. Now, what should I even say?
But so while you put your thoughts together, I just wanted to also clarify something. If you earlier, the communication or that conversation was that this helicopter went off the radar 14 minutes after takeoff, which is 9:12. So
9:26.
So give or take 9:26, it was reported to have gone off the radar. But you say, per the information that you have from your sources, this helicopter was still flying 27 minutes after it went off the radar.
Because we know for a fact that the impact was around 09, 51, 52, 53, 55.
Okay.
So simple arithmetic. 0953, you deduct 0912. And it shows that the plane had flown about 41 minutes and had only about 9 thereabout, 5 to 9 minutes. to fly to Obuasi.
Yes.
My assumption is that the plane was flying. Otherwise, it couldn't have been at the impact zone.
Which is the Dampier area.
Which is a Dampier area.
Which is just 13 kilometers from the...
13 kilometers, but three minutes by helicopter flight. Remember, it's not a human being or a vehicle that is walking. But let me correct one, and then maybe my colleagues will come in. Alfred, the international protocol per ICAO is not 30 minutes after you cannot communicate with a plane that you declare a distress. No. It is 30 minutes after the ETA, the estimated time of arrival, which is about 10:02. You sound an alert. So, because there's a military aircraft, Air Force Base will call elements in Kumasi. In this case, the military or Obuasi, whatever, this plane is expected or was expected to be at Obuasi by this time. Have you seen it? We cannot communicate with it. It's 30 minutes after. It takes us to 10:32.
Yes.
By international protocol, it is the next 30 minutes. If still the Air Force Base has not been able to contact the plane, then you declare the distress. And that is when any search and rescue, substantive starts. It starts after 1 hour, not 30 minutes.
Right.
So let's work again with the time and space. That takes us to 11:02, thereabout. That was when, if you like, anybody who was ready to jump into a vehicle, assuming the vehicle was there and they were ready, would have started at about 1100 hours, either from Obuasi or from Kumasi. You see what I mean?
Yes. So the timelines that I referenced earlier corroborate what you just said. In fact,
because you emphasize that 30 minutes.
So we'll put out, this is what we put on the screen. That's the search and rescue, 30 minutes after no contact of the expected time of arrival, which was 10:02.
No, not 30 minutes after. 30 minutes after, you sound an alert.
Right.
For people to see whether they can find it. I mean, visually, that kind of stuff. Use other methods, electronic and so on. It is 60 minutes after ETA that you haven't found the aircraft. Then you declare the distress.
I see.
It is the distress that triggers the search and rescue. It is not a 30 minutes alert. And I think we need to put that into perspective because it ensures that we don't start apportioning blame to institutions that they delayed and they were not there and probably people were alive or whatever it is and they could have rescued some of them. It's very, very material that we work with international protocol.
Okay, but just some form of education, as you're saying. Why 1 hour? In the minds of someone who's watching, 60 minutes is too long a period to wait before another rescue team is sent or dispatched to the area. So why 60 minutes?
I think it's a good question. I would suggest that the next time persons like Wing Commander Sobojo come, these are the expert, Air Force officers, or anybody who is an expert in civil aviation per se. But there must be very good reasons why internationally ICAO has decided that it's 30 minutes alert, 30 minutes distress. Now trigger all your search and rescue or search and rescue recovery processes. And I've tried to explain that. Assuming that at 11:02, the F will be at Obuasi, some of whom, including elements from Central Command, Aferi, Camp Kwadaso, who were in Obuasi because the ministers were, assuming that they took off at 1100 hours. It takes another 40 minutes, up to 40 minutes, to move from Obuasi to Sikamai. Then you add the 2 hours maximum before you would have reached the impact site. Now remember this search and rescue. So my information is that certain elements, like those who got there at 12:40 Sikamai, did not arrive there with ambulances. The ambulances followed later, Other elements from Kumasi followed later. The regional minister followed later, with fire service, with police, with NADMO, and so on. You see what I mean? Military got there first, everybody else. And I think the investigations would establish where the truth is.
Yes.
The regional minister was not the first to have reached the impact site, and not also Sikaman. It was military elements, whether they were prepared for search and rescue. For instance, when they got there, they were not medical persons. They didn't have latex gloves. I'm told that some of them who were carrying this thing were not even wearing latex gloves. Some of them had, who were pulling the bodies or the remains, but not everybody had. Because somebody said, you don't predict, or accidents are not predetermined. And therefore, if you are FOB or Boase, you are staying at the Longclay Stadium to receive a delegation. You are there not prepared for search and rescue. But once you get a directive, then you move with your hands, whatever it is that you can. You see what I mean? For instance, I have footages, photographs, images of soldiers. People say, why didn't they use jungle warfare tag? That was exactly what they did. They cut sticks, and then they slung, what do you call it? They brought the body bags from the ambulances in Sikaman village. See, they were very sensible. The thing that in Akan we call krotia. They did not bring the bodies in the sacks into Sikaman village. When they came down the hill, they stopped short 300 meters on the outskirts of the village. Then they transferred the bodies from the sacks into, what do you call them? The body bags. But I'm afraid to say, I'm very sorry to say it. When you see those pictures, the body bags are sagging, meaning that they were not whole bodies. I mean, if you die, you stiffen. I've seen the 3 judges and the major who died. They were virtually solid pieces. If you put them in any container which is flexible, it will still be like that. You could see that these soldiers had cut sticks and had tied the 2 ends of the body bags to the sticks and were carrying them on their shoulders to the ambulance. Because under the circumstances, even if there were stretchers, probably 1 stretcher in the 3 stretchers at the most, only 3 ambulances were there. From the hilltop to Sikaman, they did what in the military we call fireman lift. Fireman lift, which is a fire service drill. You carry the person or the load like this. And those were the pictures that we saw. One remained 1 person. It's not a question of, people holding. But remember, they were coming down the slope. It had rained, it had drizzled, the place was muddy, the gradient was steep, which was why some people got some distance and couldn't go, and they went by. In fact, the regional minister did well.
Nature of the area.
Yes, by being able to reach there. I'm told several other people had to retire to the village. You see what I mean? So this is the context. It is very, very unfair for anybody to say that the military was not there. Let me give you another dimension. We saw when the bodies arrived, about 10 p.m. on the 6th. Did we find out what that aircraft was? That Casa 125 fixed plane that we saw had been directed to leave Accra for Kumasi. And it didn't go empty. It went with a preliminary investigation team, headed by now I know by a colonel, an Air Force group captain.
Right.
So I'm trying to suggest that institutions were working to the best of their knowledge and based on the information. It was that plane, eventually, parked at the Prempeh, the first international airport, that brought the bodies back. Assuming this plane had not been dispatched, assuming, or for some reason the plane was not airworthy, then we might have to find other resources. There was another helicopter, the Russian, Mi-17, is based at Tamale for Boku crisis duties. That plane was brought to Kumasi, directed to fly to Kumasi for aerial search and rescue. But by the time it got to Kumasi, all of us knew where the impact was. So it was not necessary for the plane to fly up. And people were saying, why didn't the plane fly to winch? You see what I mean? That was one option.
So why didn't that?
Well, if you needed to do that, per jungle warfare, you needed to do a clearing. You see what I mean? Cut all the trees. If you could have a flat surface, to the best of my knowledge, there is no flat surface anywhere. The investigations will come out.
In the range area?
In that range area where the plane impacted the hill, it was all a slope. Now, whether the plane had ropes, you see, it's not that because it's a helicopter at all times, all the gears that you require for different tasks are on the plane. You see, and when they left Tamale, they were there for conflict resolution purposes. They might not have had gear for search and rescue. So even if they came to Kumasi, they might not have had the ropes that some were mentioning to have flown and then hovered on the treetops. Now, if you did that, remember, you were going to winch up one at a time. And it pains me. We are not talking about bodies. It is out of respect that we are saying bodies. They were not bodies. They were human remains that people had to go down the slope together with the locals. And it is very, very wrong for anybody to think that search and rescue is only the work of military. There's something we call whole of society approach. So if you have civilians like Akosombo Dam spillage, we expected that anybody who was there, and we saw footages, members of parliament going there, mobilizing civilians, whatever, to do the best that they could. You could have civilians in an impact zone, but they should be controlled so that they don't contaminate the site. Because we need the site for forensic purposes. And that is where things went wrong.
That's
including the official decisions to remove the bodies without sufficiently marking where these remains were, photographing them, videoing them.
So this whole society approach was not done according to protocol. Because then we saw the residents take some of the debris home. There's a cash reward for them to return it.
If I may use our Ghanaian parlance, you and I were not there, were we?
But at least
the farmer or farmers who saw that were already in the zone. The one who said he didn't have his phone, so he asked his wafasi to call somebody in the village and report it. They were already there. The Sikaman people, indeed, as villagers, it would take them probably shorter to get to the site. Now, by 11 o'clock, the military wasn't there. The military got there 12:40. The impact was around 09:55. So 09:55 to 12:40, the civilians, the locals, had the lead out of curiosity, out of whatever, to go there. And because of lack of awareness, they went and started picking, debris, including somebody's wristwatch, which fortunately was returned. You see, so again, saying that the military did not control. It's not a very good picture that those people are painting. Some of the people we saw in civics or mufti could have been national security. They were there. Fire service was there. NADMO elements were there. They were there in ordinary dresses. Maybe they had their, this reflective jackets and so on. So if you got there and immediately you established control and controlled which civilians were there doing what, that is acceptable. It's a whole of society approach. But it's possible, and the pictures that we are seeing show that some civilians probably were not under control. Then the pictures that the media is showing are not sequential. So they give the impression that, after the soldiers had arrived, civilians were still milling around. Because when you see the picture, you didn't see the timelines. The timelines that I extracted, I used some tools. I sent the pictures to somebody who used some tools to extract what we call the metadata and find the timestamp of when the soldiers were carrying the body on the outskirts of what do you call it, of Sikama. It was between 5:45 p.m. and 6:02 p.m. So in my paper, I've said that by this time, using those two timelines, some, if not all, of the 8, whatever it is, had arrived at Sikama. Now, if you look at the broader picture, that by 6 p.m., we had recovered whatever we could recover, not the black box store. And then by 10 p.m., 10 p.m. on the day, we had brought all the remains to Accra. Some credit must be given to the institution, because at Atiwa, it took us 3 days. Atiwa didn't have a village like Sikama in close proximity. It took 3 days. Why did it take 3 days? Because the aircraft that we purchased does not have all the technologies. There are no homing devices. You see what I mean?
Yes.
So when they land, there is no signal emitting from the plane to guide others to the place. There's no satellite traction, nothing. You see what I mean?
Yes. You see, but there's a policy angle to this, and that's why I asked the question about the protocol, and you say that it's an answer that we may get from some who have served in the Air Force, and why that 1 hour period as well. And then I'll later understand what exactly this Z9 helicopter was supposed to play in our defense architecture. And this is why I bring Mr. Bento. Earlier, within the week, Lieutenant General Williams, Ejapon, who's the Chief of Defense Staff, addressed the media. He did acknowledge, in fact, that some things happened that was outside of the culture of search and rescue and the protocol in place. So there's that acknowledgement that there were some lapses. Yeah. I want us to take a listen to him, and I'll come to you, because some of the things that Colonel Festus Abaje has been talking about regarding protocol, the role that the armed forces played, and what could have been done better, because he acknowledges the lapse. Let's take a look at this.
In our case, when we suspected that something might have happened to the aircraft, it took us additional 30 minutes for us to apply the known protocols to see where the aircraft was. Because once an aircraft loses communication, it doesn't mean that it has crashed. It could be flying very low, out of radar. It could be weather condition, or it could be mechanical. So after 30 minutes, once we realized that we were still not making progress, then we initiated what we call the rescue efforts, because we still didn't know whether there were casualties. So the closest military post at that time was the team that had gone to secure the helipad to receive the team, to receive the helicopter. And they were as far as Obuasi. It took them some time to get to the scene. By that time, the locals who were at the scene had already started interfering with the crime scene. It was in a thick forest, it was getting late. We had the option of leaving our remains there till the following day, and we know what could have happened to the bodies. So the team that was up there assessing the situation decided to use available material they could lay hands on to start to descend the high ground. In the morning when the aircraft was taking off, nobody expected any such disaster. But from the crash to Accra, it's possible, likely, that some things might have been done that were not in conformity with our culture. But I must tell you that those who are on the ground assess the situation, and from where I stand, and looking back, I think that they did the best with the resources that they had at hand.
That's the Chief of Defense Staff, Mr. Bento. There's that acknowledgement that certainly, some things may have been done outside of the culture. Some things could have been done better as well. And taking into consideration some of the questions that have been asked and the answers provided, emergency preparation is not one that you put in place not anticipating an accident, is it not?
Correct. So what the military officer said is really important. I think there's a certain acknowledgement of the fact that some things could have been done better. But we also have to appreciate the fact that we don't have a very well-resourced military for good reasons. So we come from the policy point, and like you said, there is a policy discussion here. And as far as I'm concerned, that's the important discussion. So it's very interesting that he puts things the way he puts it. Why do I say that's the important discussion? It is because whenever you have a situation of inadequate resources, which is always the situation, not even the U.S. Army, the greatest army ever formed in this world, has enough resources. Recently, they've been having some crashes and they've been having issues. But where you have a situation like ours, which is even more crucial, more acute, your protocols, your policies, your a priori systems thought through that if this happens, this is what will happen, is what helps you to maximize resource use and to get the best outcomes out of circumstances like this. So indeed, that's very important. Now, I can say, without any shadow of doubt, that the Ghana Army is the best in West Africa, at least, and one of the best in Africa. Now, over the period, I have been receiving some information from Army officers who won't disclose who they are, but what we do, we get a lot of information. And even before that, I have friends in the Army I call once a while, and we have chats. And I have the angles I discuss. In fact, for more than 5 years now, in Imani, we've had a discussion about the optimal structure for our defense forces. Okay. Incidentally, about a week or two ago, I put a bit of it even on Facebook, that I think we have fragmented our armies and our security forces, and we should, put them together. That was an argument or a discussion before now. But the point I'm making is this, that we have a security system, army, police, fire service, which is actually very good. And that is very good under the circumstance that they are not as resourced as they should. All right? So all these things said, we will give them quite a bit of slack if things like this happen. But that is why we need to have the policy discussion. And this is the policy discussion. Every system, institution, but especially the army or the armed forces, have standard operating procedures. Yes. And these are policies that manifest in systems. And they are a priori. They are thought through, tested before the fact. And they are targeted at different scenarios. Right? Now, this is actually strategy. And it's applied in companies, it's applied in, but specifically in armies, it's applied. So, in a functioning army like the Ghana Army, there will be some procedures, processes, standard operating systems that you have to follow through in case of a situation like that happening. So, it is reasonable for us to ask these questions. And when you see things, when you have facts, lawyers call them ocular proof with your own eyes, you can't deny them. So we saw things. And that means we have to ask questions. It is not a denigration of anybody. Right? So when you put all these things together, let's put it this way. There are facts, and then there are policies and analysis. Okay. Now, the facts in a situation like this should not be discussed by the public as if they have been established, unless after an official investigation and a report. I repeat, the facts of the matter, we all saw some things. What happened, what didn't happen, when it happened, who was there, these are facts. We all know, we'll discuss them. Experts like Colonel here can go a bit far like he has gone because he knows things we don't know.
Sure.
But the rest of us can say, well, I saw somebody carrying this, I saw somebody, but you must not discuss them as if they are the final. You discuss them as, oh, I saw it and maybe it means 1 or 7 things. But they have to be ascertained through an official, properly done report. And the fact that it's a military does not matter in that instance because when it's done, aspects of it at least have to be made public. There's a reason why. So that's for facts. So all of us are conjecturing. Facts. But when it comes to policy, standard operating procedures and analysis, we can do some work. And where can we do some work? For instance, I can tell you here now, without even knowing all the military systems. By the way, when it happened, we at Imani, we tasked one of our gentlemen to study the whole thing, local, international, and we did, and we found out a few things. But here, I speak just about some of the things that I think are reasonable to speak about. For instance, suggestions that this whole thing went perfectly or couldn't have been done better are not right. Nobody should suggest that from the crash to all the things that, nobody should suggest that, all right? Now, it is reasonable for us, ordinary mere mortals who don't know what the military does, it is reasonable for us to expect that a military aircraft flying within the land space of Ghana, if it ends up in a catastrophic failure, I'm not talking about radar going off. This was a crash.
Yes.
It is reasonable for you, me, Prof, Ima, even the experts, to say, if in Ghana, if an aircraft crashes anywhere, there should be almost immediate reflection of that somewhere. It's just reasonable. If it is not there, that's one thing.
Yes.
And those are the things that we come from the we who come from the policy side. I say that if it is not there, then let's figure out, because if that happens, it's not unreasonable to say there must be some sort of, something must reflect somewhere. Yes. And it is reasonable for us to say, when there's a reflection or notice that there has been a catastrophic failure, a crash somewhere, we are not waiting for the 1 hour that he's talking about. He explained the certain process here.
Yes.
That is the normal thing when you don't know there has been a crash. But if that crash registered somewhere, it is reasonable to say there must be immediate or as immediate as possible reaction.
Yes.
And those reactions must follow a standard operating procedure, some policy which has been designed, tested before the fact.
Right.
That's reasonable.
Because the 1 hour is the explanation of if when it goes off the radar.
No, yes.
And then,
yes. It doesn't mean it's a crash.
It's a
yes.
crash.
But what we are saying is that if there's a crash,
happens,
it should be immediate.
It should reflect somewhere.
It should reflect somewhere. We can't have a functioning state and say we are going to fly military aircraft or any other kind of aircraft within the land space of Ghana and not build the systems that make sure that a catastrophic failure will reflect. That we must do. If we don't have it now, we should go there. And to that extent, therefore, once it reflects, there must be a reaction. And that must be immediate. Now, if this was some company flying its plane and it crashed and there was no immediate reaction, you say it's a company.
Yes.
But when you talk about the army, and I made a point, we have jungle warfare training in Ocansey. This country trains people from other places in jungle warfare. And one of my colleagues was making the point that, look, I mean, again, like I said, we have a very good army. But if for any reason some insurgents pop up in some forest somewhere and something catastrophic is happening there within the land space of Ghana, and we are not able to mobilize our army in an hour to go there, then we need to do some reshuffling. We need to rearrange ourselves. And I'm not saying it's easy. I am not saying it's easy, but what I'm saying is that Ghana is not really a big country. And yes, we have a lot of forested terrain and they are difficult places. But I think, and this is just me thinking, that within the space of 60 minutes, whether flying from Accra or Takoradi or Kumasi or Boku, it should be possible to reach any place. It's just a policy guy thinking within an hour, because an hour is a long time to do a lot of things.
Indeed.
Okay?
Indeed.
And we know in the sub-region, if you study the security system, that look at the Zambezi forest. These people like operating from some of these places. Okay, so this is just the policy wing of things. That, you know what? When we wake up, we go about our work and we go to bed. Some of us assume that these things are already in place. So once a while, when some of these things happen, then we see that, hey, we may have problems. So again, to the things that we saw, and by the way, if they couldn't get there in an hour, there could be a number of reasons. These are facts that the investigation will show. But we saw that the locals got there, okay, but at the time, you had locals there, you had security elements there from various places. And the worrying aspect which we saw was that in the face of some of the security people, you could see ordinary people, not uniform, etc., carrying away pieces of whatever. And my point is, if you didn't get there early, that's fine. But when you get there, again, I am thinking there must be a certain standard operating procedure that says secure the space first. So it was worrying that you could see security people standing there, and people were cutting off pieces.
And taking the debris and others.
Yes.
But there's a video that we're going to put on the screen in a bit. You just make the point, because... I'm
wondering that, Kofi, are we sure that those who were carrying those dead bodies were just civilians? Because as Colonel said,
some people in ordinary clothing.
It could be that they were also national security. Because I was also wondering when I saw it that how can a soldier be standing there and an ordinary person is carrying this?
This is how they were dressed.
So exactly,
the residents, if this people dressed this way, cannot be national security.
Oh, well,
no, that one.
no, Alfred, but that's the point I'm making. The point I'm making is we saw. He and I, we are not security experts. But we are seeing this on the screen. And what we are saying is that if nobody proves that these guys are national security or whatever it is, then we have a problem. That is number one. Number two, if they are national security or whatever, okay, I don't think this is good enough still. Because if you are there as a security operation or whatever it is, how does somebody else differentiate between this guy and a national? It should be some form of order, so that if I was there and I saw somebody carrying out, I'll stop the person and try and say, take it back. What if that person is national security? So there must be a certain kind of order.
Yes.
Yeah, look at that. How do you explain that this was possibly national security? So we are saying that those of us who are looking at this from a policy point of view, we think this is problematic. That's the point we are making. And we are saying that, look, at the end of the day, we should learn from these things and make sure it doesn't happen again. All right? So we have seen some of these things. All said and done, look, like I said from the beginning, it could not be that would, get this perfectly right. And I think we've done what we can under the circumstance. But as a country, there are things we should be happy about too. Okay? For whatever, like you said, in the Tiwa, it took some time. Okay? This was a difficult place. I think we have organized ourselves under the circumstance with the limited resources that we have, not too shabbily. And whenever we were able to do things better under this circumstance, I think we've done very well. And to that extent, look at, for instance, the organization of the funeral. Okay? Look at, finally, when the bodies were evacuated, by the time they landed in Accra, they were properly casketed. They were properly, draped in flags. They were received by an organized regiment, that kind of thing. And subsequently, the whole nation was mobilized. There are times when you have declarations of money and everything, and people just go by the way. I don't see anybody who is not taking this seriously. And the culmination of it in the funeral that you saw, I was so proud of myself as a Ghanaian, because that thing was expertly done. And it tells you a country that is organized. And look at the kind of situation you saw there. You had everybody who was somebody there, putting aside everything. It was so orderly, and we gave them the respect and honor that they deserved. True. So look, Alfred, we will not sit down and say everything was fine, let's go to bed. We have to learn lessons. We have to make sure the mistakes are not repeated. Let me tell you why. This will happen again. In a country that is developing, in a country that is moving forward, where aviation is expanding, today you have a lot of people with private crafts. You will get some of these things. And I was saying at another time in another program here that unfortunately, even when it's military, whenever there's a problem, it has impact on the ordinary social, systems.
True.
So unfortunately, it will happen again. And that's not
and
a
this
real...
is not you being a prophet of...
I am telling you as an analyst that when you have more flights, when you have more aviation, when you have more expansion in that area, some of these things come with the territory. So we must prepare so that at every opportunity, we do better going forward.
And you see that in the previous instances that similar things or accidents, no, I'm not calling it an accident, these crashes have happened, the fatalities grow.
Yes.
In fact, the increases
Unfortunately.
over time.
Unfortunately.
Because the last we had, which was the Itiwa one, that about all 5 were on board, died.
Yeah.
And they were on a medical...
The survival rate is very low,
yes.
and that's a problem. And an army expert told me something, and it's very important, so let me put it down. I was going to bring it later. We have an army, an air force. You'll be surprised that a really big chunk of the flying that our Air Force does is for VIPs and civilians. The first time I went into a plane to fly was a Ghana Air Force plane as a student. And I think that's the experience of many people. And if you take our Air Force today, they do a lot of these VIP flights. And
indeed.
an army, I've forgotten his rank, but a very senior person in the army, he made a point. He said, look, we buy military crafts for military purposes, but we end up using a lot of them for civilian purposes. And that when you have civilian VIP flights, even when the military does that, there is specific craft for that. So if you take this particular trip that they went in, it's a VIP trip. There is a specific craft for that, which is a military craft, but it is adapted for civilian or VIP. And we don't do that. And because of that, when you have this conflation of civilians flying on military craft, and you don't have all the, necessary things you have to have. When there's a problem, soldiers react differently.
True.
They are trained differently. So you tend to get some very serious arrangements. Now, I think going forward, we must rethink our whole military. If indeed it is true that more than 50% of the inland flights that we do is our Air Force carrying VIPs, there's no problem with that. But then let us design our system to fit that. If the president could have been on this flight, if you are going to fly presidents and ministers and VIPs, we shouldn't fly them on hardcore military jets or helicopters. Maybe we should have one GIP military craft. I mean, the U.S. Air Force Marine One is a military craft, but it is adapted for that purpose. I think we should start thinking in those terms. Then we would have greater survivability in case of some of these problems.
But I'll come to you, Mr. Bande, but just a quick one. What was the purpose, the exact role of this Z9 in our defense architecture?
Well, at the time, there's this thing we call the mix of the fleet. So the Ghana Air Force it still has the Mi-17, Russian-made. This is the top of the range. It's got a higher lift capability. It can hover longer. It can fly, longer and so on. Then in between, we then have the Augusta Bell, which have been decommissioned. Then we have the Z9. So it's like a rich man or an institution saying, we'll go for Suzuki, the type that Uber is using. And that one will be used by messengers, to run here, and the motorbike. In fact, people have started using Okada and Co.
Indeed.
But then for the chief executive, like Prof, who have a V8. You see, then in between we have a pickup. So it's got a good mix, right? I didn't want to go there, but our good friend Kofi is saying that when people talk about numbers, this, that, we need to ask, Are those things airworthy or seaworthy or roadworthy? So on the inventory, anywhere that you check, Ghana Air Force has a number of things. Of the Z9s, 4 came in 2015. I'm told, I suspect about 2 more came in recently. And that was one of the crashed ones. Very, very new.
And new, this one is
This one is newer than the 2015 fleet. But as of the 6, only one Z9 was airworthy. So even if it was not the one fitted for VIP flights, and one of them was fitted for VIP flights, I've seen the pictures. In other words, the seats were well, upholstered and so on. They are not the rugged type that, soldiers would wear. So the Air Force takes into consideration some of these, like the Fokker that flies the president. It's got, reasonably decent seats. So you bring in aircraft, this type, basically for logistics, for troop transport. Then for the VIP, missions, which are also important. Unless, of course, you get the equation in such a way that the Air Force is always flying, your VIPs and doesn't have, spare capacity or redundant capacity to do other things, So they have decided, across different administrations, this government is only 8 months or so old. So all the aircraft that we have acquired were acquired prior, probably during this first tenure of the president. First, you need to lift your troops, in rapid response situations. It helps you to build up faster. So you need a mix of capabilities to do that. You need to move resources, equipment, ammunition, food, whatever, to support, the military. We don't have armed helicopters, which could play a combat role, stay in the air, or I stand to be corrected, that we don't have. But they will stay in the air and they will deliver fire on the ground. You need them for air medevac. There are some situations where it is better to move the patient by air than by road. And I cited the case of 2nd August, when the Z9 flew from Takoradi to Accra with a patient. Then you can use it for area reconnaissance and search and rescue. You can use it for maritime roles. They will fly in the air, communicating with the Navy on the ships to do a number of things. So you need to sit around the table, as Kofi suggested. You develop different scenarios. Then you settle on one and say, for this scenario, or this and that scenario, we need a fleet with a mix of this and that and that.
Because
let me end on the Mi-17.
Yes.
We have only one that flies.
Only one
Now,
Mi-17.
because of external factors, Russia needs its Mi-17s and the spare parts to fight its war against Ukraine. Then on top of that, the US government says that Russia is under sanctions. But if you, Ghana, you, India, you, whatever, if you do business with Russia, there will be consequences. So the Mi-17s, we have more than one. I will not mention the number. But the rest are on the ground. We cannot find the spare parts. And probably if we find the spare parts, we will not find the budget. Because the armed forces does not have a budget, and they don't control it. It's the civilian authorities that must make the budget of it. And of course, we've heard over years, we are retooling, we are retooling, we are retooling. But it looks like there's never a time when we can say that, oh, we have retooled the police, the fire service, the armed forces, and so on. So that's the situation that we are faced with. There is a certain quote, in quotes, inverted commas, the president must fly. That is how the military sees it. The president is going to Wale Wale. Do you get what it means?
Yes.
It means that that's number one priority. Put everything aside. If it cannot fly, find resources to fix it and get the president in Wale Wale. It puts a lot of stress on the limited resources that not only the Ghana Armed Forces, it could be fire service, it could be, Ghana Police Service, any number of institutions.
Yeah, we have fire service tenders providing water for communities that don't have. Those are some of the things that are there. But it's quite concerning when you put out that the 6 Z9s that we have, only one
Only one.
Only one.
That one is gone.
Was airworthy, and that is the one that has crashed. Somebody, this one, it's troubling, you know, that picture. That even because we don't have, for instance, air ambulances, we would have to rely on military helicopters to discharge medical evacuations and dispatch patients from one region to the other. And the helicopters that we have in the fleet, a number of them are not airworthy. Specific to this Z9 one that has crashed, out of the 6, only one was airworthy, and that's the one that has crashed as well.
Estimated 6.
The estimated.
No, Steve.
This is troubling, to say the least, is it not?
Yes. What this conversation is telling us is that in our functioning democracy, the institutions that make it functional have to perform at their optimum if we want to be able to continue to make the type of progress. And I like Kofi's point that was always linked to policy thinking. Because what the policy thinking does is to help us to be very discerning about what we need and how should our army be equipped as one of the very important institutions that makes our state to function, and that helps in the deepening of our democracy, if I were to preface that broadly. But having said that, in the tragedy that we find ourselves as we continue to mourn, the conversation is easy in terms of the retooling, which Kennel says we've always been repeating, but we've not succeeded in doing. But you watch, once we get out of this period and we begin to talk concretely about how we do that, we'll be sucked into the politics. And that is our problem. We are not able to separate ourselves from how political decision-making processes makes institutions to function and to be efficient. Because then we would pull back and later on complain why these institutions do not function. Let me add on to that, because the whole, if you call it spectrum, goes right up to the very top. Now, one thing I can attest and I've experienced myself is how the military love to, they use the term, deliver their head of state in security and efficiently in order that he's able to or she's able to do what must be done by a head of state. And the moment you begin to think in terms of the way the military think professionally, as it has been recounted, their concern is the execution of the duty. And once they are able to deliver the head of state at a particular location to do his work, the mission is accomplished. To the extent that I was on President Mohammed's team when he was part of a team of four heads of ECOWAS state mediating the exit of Yahya Jammeh. When we landed in Banjul and we're now going into the city, which is quite a distance from the airport for the formalities to be, one thing I noticed was that our military flying the government plane, the presidential jet at that time, refused to go into town. They would not take any food or anything that would be later on, that would be in the city. They preferred staying at the airport and staying next to their plane. And I, being curious in the type of conversations that I want, it is because they do not want anything to happen and they cannot explain why they were not near the plane and it happened. Just to give you a speck of what that is. So that for me is significant. And my interest therefore would be, when we get out of this, what does it mean for us to look at it in this sense? I can give a very quick synopsis. If you recall, when the F-28, the Fokker 28, that had been in service for quite a long time, became literally not fit for purpose. At that time, President Rawlings secured a Gulfstream jet that was retrofitted. It was not brand new. It was retrofitted for the purposes now of replacing the F-28. it was mired in politics. And here, let me begin by saying that when I talk about the politics, I'm not excluding myself. I'm talking about all of us are guilty of how the politics is not helping the cause of our development in terms of the conversation we're having here.
Partisan politics.
The partisan politicking became so extreme that when we went into the next political dispensation, it did not take long for that jet to be sold out. In fact, there was a news commentary to describe in poetry how that jet flew out of Accra, never to return. Then immediately afterwards, that government was stuck. The president could not travel. The Ghana Airways planes were at their dying days. And I still remember President Kufuor's first travel. He was hiring the DC-9, which was basically also not fit for purpose. So Ghana was stuck. Why? Because partisan politics deprived us of a presidential jet because we wanted to always score the political points. Now, what happened after that? President Kufuor then took the initiative to order the Falcon, but he actually placed an order for two, a bigger one, which is the Airbus, and then the Falcon, so that you can have at least alternatives. You can be able to yeah, for resources and for reasons that I do not have the detail. When President Mills was in office, he opted for the Falcon jet, which is still the one that we have. And as we now know, it is corroded and stranded in France. I'll give this very quick background to say that at that level, the state must always function. The state never stops functioning. Our collective embodiment as a people, our sovereignty, that embodiment is in the head of state. So that when the head of state is traveling, it is not just moving from point A to B. It is security, it is the capacity to still function as head of state, including even communication whilst he's traveling. To be able to function efficiently means to do multiple things at the same time. That he can attend meetings, for example, in West Africa, and be back in Accra for presidential duties. And if it's a long distance, to be able to do that. And before I would come into a substantive issue, to add on to this, because of my work and the experience I've acquired, if you go to countries like Angola, the fleet that is the government fleet that has been described here, there are three. A smaller one for what you would call shorter distances, a medium-sized one for what is called regional, and a very big one for long distance. And as I remember, in mediation support, the president of Angola was in Portugal, but he needed to receive very important documents to give instructions about going ahead in mediation support between DRC and the Rwanda. But because of the capacity for the government to function efficiently, it do not constitute a problem. Just to give a quick tip about how planes are not just because they are planes, but they are used for the functioning effectively and efficiently of a head of state. Now, having observed this at this level, and coming back closer to the topic that you are raising, the conversation that has happened here, what does it indicate? Particularly in the context of a tragedy that has shocked the entire nation. You in the media, you have to self-control by beginning with the conversation about how do we invite people to talk about this? Indeed. And it's very clear here that it's not everybody who can talk about this. So the fact that we had everybody talking, and you know, in Ghana, there is something that is strange. There are too many people who say they are security analysts. You are not. Because when Colonel is speaking, you can see the difference. Indeed. He's worn the uniform. Absolutely. He's gone through the contours. He knows what it means. He can feel it. So when he's talking, Kofi and I and Prof would defer to that experience. True. But there are people who have not gone through all that. But they are more experts than those who have gone through that. So that for me is one area. When the conversation started to become more sanitized, it was when more of the military expertise started to talk. Then we could then begin to discern the difference. But earlier on, there were so many people who wanted to contribute to these matters, but they do not have the requisite expertise. Why is this important? Because the tragedy has shocked people and families are grieving. Now, if those who do not have that expertise are just talking about these issues the way they do, you are adding to the grief and to the trauma, not just of the immediate family, but literally the entire nation. Yeah. And so if we talk about lessons, one of the lessons that I would put forward is, let us sanitize our media space so that those who have expertise in particular areas are the ones to contribute to it. Not that people should not contribute. It's one thing when we have to deal with the social media. But it's another when in our official media spaces, we have to deal with issues, some of them are unsubstantiated, some of them totally lacking the expertise and the rest of it. Then the other point is, and again, going forward, I'm shocked to see, you see, where is our capacity when we're growing? And you heard about civic education. It was something that was taken so seriously. How is it possible that civilians can go into that forest and be carrying plastic or metal pieces of a crash plane and standing and videoing themselves? How are we informing ourselves as a people about the respect that must come along, how we deal with these matters? Somebody has to do that, and maybe for the lack of the complete information, it has to be our Commission for Civic Education. How do civilians interact with military, vice versa, particularly when it comes to a tragedy such as this? Or, and we'll come to that later, civilians surrounding police officers on motorbikes, threatening them because these police people came into their community to apprehend people in Galamsey.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. How are we dealing with the education of the people to understand what exactly it means to respect and defer to your security agencies whose ultimate objective is your protection? Because we all know that the responsibility to protect that is in the state is deployed through its security agencies. And if its security agencies are not able to do an efficient job, it's all of us who suffer the consequences. So this, for me, becomes very, very important. And I would want to come back and talk more about how then are we building the consensus. That now makes it possible that when we say the military need the equipment to be able to do the work they do, the expertise that informs how they are retooled, what equipment they buy, how do they buy it, where do they source it, what kind of aircraft, listening to Colonel's little contribution about you can acquire an aircraft but it will not function because of our international geopolitics. And that has to be taken into account. It doesn't matter whether we are purchasing from Russia or we are purchasing from the United States. How does policy inform the choices we make about the type of aircraft? And once that is done, the political consensus supports it. And it does not become a victim of extreme partisan politics that then erodes the very demand that we want for our institutions to work. And why? Because if at the end of the day, the military institution is not able to function the way we all want, it doesn't matter your political affiliation or where you belong to, you are going to suffer the consequences. And I'm somebody who speaks passionately about this because I know what it means to secure a community that is in conflict and that is experiencing violence. And you need your military to come and secure that place professionally to protect lives. Now, if the military do not have the means, they do not have the capacity, they do not have the equipment, how do you do that? So this for me will be the type of comments I have at this stage. And to say that the tragedy, if I were to underscore or underline what is the valuable lesson, we have to separate how the key institutions like the military, the Ghana Police Service, and all the affiliate institutions in their work are not caught in extreme political partisanship.
A very,
Thank you
very
so much.
important issue. And see, this is why, Professor Jampo, but in dealing with the fabrications and speculations, the assumptions, that's the main reason why the direction of the conversation is important. The point that Mr. Bento made earlier about the systems and structures to be able to, for instance, detect when there's a crash. Do we have that kind of installation here in this country?
Well, per this Z9, it did not have, for instance, those of us who drive a bit of a modern car, even modern cars on roads have sensors.
Sure.
These pure water people, motor riders get close to you, and then it starts beeping and giving you some red lights. Some of that technology are on some aircraft. So even if you buy without it, go and retrofit it and put that technology. Terrain warning, if it was on this Z9, and for security reasons, I don't want to say whether it was there, but if it was, maybe it malfunctioned, or we don't know.
I see.
Or maybe the battery had run down. Because if it had terrain warning, then it would have given the pilot adequate time that you are going into terrain. Now, let me use some three interrelated terms. It does appear that this flight, Z9, was authorized not under visual flight rules, but under special flight rules.
What does that mean?
Now, visual flight rules mean that as a helicopter, use your eyes to be able to determine at any time where you are. So you are flying visual. The opposite is instrument flight rules, i.e., you are being assisted by onboard instruments, navigation instruments. This flight was visual flight rules. The special means that the weather circumstances were such that there were minimal, how do I explain it? It was going to be a bit more difficult to use your eyes, but you can still fly, but you need to be a bit careful. So when you get into that kind of
a bad weather situation,
yes, you are flying under special visual flight rules. You end up with what they say is the meteorological, conditions. So if at the time of the impact, for instance, it is very likely that he had encountered fog along the way, as two other planes did, and all emergency landed, one aborted, the other one continued. What I'm told, I haven't flown in that circumstance, is that once you enter the fog, you get what they call the visual disorientation. Now, your sense of where you are, and sometimes what your instruments are telling you, may not be reconcilable. So momentarily, you then go, what is the word of it? Control flight into terrain. You are flying under controlled circumstances. Your spatial disorientation are kicked in. Your instruments are not telling you the right thing. The plane flies into terrain. But if you have terrain warning, then despite everything, the terrain warning will kick in, and tell you that you are going into terrain, into terrain, into terrain. All of these we don't know.
True.
The other one is that at 13 nautical miles and 3 minutes from Obuasi, the plane was not at 4,000 feet, which is the minimum for the special visual flight rules. It has started descent, as one air professor, a former Air Force pilot said. It was on the descent phase. Now, in the descent phase or climbing phase, you enter fog, it compounds the problem.
Because you are lower.
Yes, so these are some of the things the investigations might be finding out. I am saying some of these things to dispel all these notions that the plane exploded midair. If it exploded midair, thanks to the media, would have seen the treetops bent. You see what I mean? Because the fire would have burnt all the treetops. Like Kofi is saying, and I think yes, Ima has said, we must be very, very careful. What it is that we categorically say was the cause of this flight, when indeed we don't know all the facts.
And I asked this question because of that reference, that Mr. Benjamin and Prof. Jampo, because of whether or not, for instance, these terrain warnings that Ken Officer Sawaje tied references, which could have also helped in ensuring that there were some remedial measures that could have been taken. We do not know whether or not it was on this Z9, whether or not, even if it was, whether it was functioning properly or not. It fits into that concern about what, in terms of the structures and instrument, the tools that the Ghana Armed Forces, the Air Force in this respect, has to have in place to be able to function effectively. And we are left with this disaster that has claimed lives, and the reality check has fallen on us. What should be the thinking going forward?
Alfred, I think that we talk too much in Ghana. And oftentimes we are in a hurry to say things that we don't know.
Right.
Ever since this tragic incident occurred, I've heard so many people saying so many things. But my view is that let the investigations be done so we can subject whatever the outcome of the investigations will be to proper scrutiny. Let the evidence-based forensic investigations be undertaken so that when we are properly seized with the adequate information, then we can begin to interrogate and we can begin to make comments, we can begin to make recommendations. Otherwise, for now, a lot of people are engaged in conjecturing based on opinionated ignorance, and it doesn't help. I think that we have gone on this tangent for far too long. Yes, I agree that some recommendations, some policy recommendations would have to be made eventually, but the policy recommendations cannot be made out of vacuum. They must be informed by science. And so we'll have to allow the scientific investigations to be undertaken so that once we are proffering suggestions, we are making policy recommendations, they would not be made out of the vacuum, but they will be informed properly. That is what I want to say. And I want to be humble by admitting that a lot of the things that are being said here, I don't know. A lot of people are ignorant about some of these things. Colonel is talking and I'm having to pay attention to be able to, some of the terminologies and jargons he's using. A lot of us are ignorant about them. Yes. Okay, so then why won't we allow those who know to undertake the investigations with a view to breaking things down for us so that we can now begin to chew on some of the things that they tell us rather than hastily jumping into radio stations, TV stations, and all of a sudden wanting to be experts on matters that you are completely ignorant, about. And he's mentioned, Mr. Bombandi has mentioned, and I believe that the media, you guys will take a cue from some of these things, that tomorrow when some of these things happen and you are empaneling your guests, you would be choosy and ensure that those whose utterances would end up educating Ghanaians will be the ones that you bring on board. We cannot be knowledgeable in everything that happens. I mean, it is arrogant for you to say that as for you, you know everything. And so if it is aircraft crashing, you can make comments. And no. I don't think that it enriches our public discourse. It doesn't. But going forward, I know, and the point has been made here, that after investigations have been carried out and after findings have been churned out, there will be some measures aimed at ensuring that we don't go back. These things, even if they have to recur, we'll be able to manage them such that there wouldn't be much casualties. And I want to hope and believe that we would not subject those interventions to partisan discourse. If it is for Ghana, it is for Ghana. And if it will help the nation, it must help the nation. We are a nation that, yes, we are poor, but comparing ourselves to other countries that are poorer than us, they've done certain things right than us, because those things that were done were allowed by all. There was a certain elite consensus that those things should be done. Look at our road networks. Okay, now look at our rail networks that are virtually non-existent. And then so look, we don't have a national carrier. Okay, it is sad. Go to Togo, even Togo. Go to Kenya. The place is littered. Kenya Airways. We don't even have one. The only national carrier that we had, we converted it into a restaurant, and shamelessly we displayed it that as for us, our national carrier is if you want to go and eat, go and eat. Look at it. So I'm saying that going forward with the implementation of policies that would ensure that these things, even when they occur, we are able to better manage them. There will be the need for more helicopters, modern helicopters to be procured. Those old ones that will have to be retrofitted or repaired, we would have to spend resources in doing them. And I'm saying that when we get there, we should be careful that we don't subject them to partisan discourse. Otherwise, then it's like democracy is not able to protect itself. Yeah. Democracy must be able to protect itself from people who are merely distractions. They will distract. When the right thing must be done, you would have people who would say that as for us, and please, these things do not help. And so our appeal to all Ghanaians that, look, we are still mourning, and we should all be sober about some of these things. Look, if for nothing at all, this incident has taught us that we are one people. Yesterday, I was at the funeral. Like Kofi said, properly organized funeral, and everybody was there. It's taught us that, look, we may have our partisan differences, but incidents like this, when they occur, we all come together to confront it. And I hope and pray that on critical issues of national importance, we'll be able to forge the needed consensus and to say that as for this one, it is for Ghana. Okay? So let us all unite and do it. And let us desist from this useless partisan practice where if A is doing the right thing, because it is not B that is not because it is not B that is doing it, B would at all costs try to find fault, or at all costs try to bring A down. That crabology politics in Ghana has not been helpful. You know, crabology, crabs. See, a crab is one crab wants to climb, and then the other crab down want to bring the one climbing downstairs. Why? Because it cannot climb. It has not helpful. It has not been helpful for our democracy. And so I am looking forward to we as a nation cashing in on this unity that we have gained to do more for Mother Ghana. I've always said that if the current administration succeeds in serving Ghana very well, if President Mahama is able to prosecute the reset agenda very well, Ghana will be a good place for all of us. Tomorrow, the other one looking for the opportunity to serve, if you are given the mandate to serve, you wouldn't have difficulties. you wouldn't have much to do, because then we would have done the foundations, and all the things that would have to be done would have been done for, so that it would be, we would not always be starting anew, as a people. So it is important, and I like the fact that, like I said, it appears we are all united in this, apart from a few, one or two social media un-Ghanaian, uncultured comments about the incident. And I'm happy that the security agencies have taken those people on. Look, no nation develops without its culture. Okay? No nation develops without its culture. Culture is the sum totality of a people's way of life. It includes the way they speak, the language they speak, the dress they wear, the food they eat. That is why, look at all the cultures that have developed, all the countries that have developed. If you go to England, they have the way they dress, they have the language they speak, they have the food they eat. If you tell them to eschew or abandon these things, it means you are telling them that they cannot develop. Okay? Our culture also has its own dictates. Okay? Our culture teaches us to respect the memory of the dead. That's why when you go to funeral and tributes or biographies are written, they are written in a certain way. Even though the person may be even a bad person, there are certain things you don't say about the dead. So it was un-Ghanaian, it was nasty, it was uncultured for a few people to hide under the cloak of partisan politics, to be spewing gibberish and nonsense about the dead, and then also using that as a platform to be threatening others, including the president. They are not Ghanaians. And they are people, in my view, they are not worthy to live among society. If you have people like this, people have died, and the whole nation is grieving. And then you go out to say that we even kill more, including the president. They are not worthy to live in society. Elsewhere, in traditional times, they would have been banished. That is who we are. And you are not getting people because you are, well, let me just say that generally, you see, under partisan politics, people have different interests. And so you cannot control everything. But I'm expecting political leaders to come and dissociate themselves from some of these comments. Okay, to create, they've done that. Yes. Yeah. Have they done that?
Yes.
No, so you see,
disassociate,
okay, well, disassociate and reprimand. Okay, disassociate and reprimand, because these are not. You see, these people, they are not even fit to be members of any political party. Yeah. They are not fit to live in society. Yeah. They are not fit to be members or supporters of political parties. They are a monumental embarrassment to the nation. And I'm saying, in traditional times, they would have been banished. Okay, democracy must protect itself. There is freedom of speech, but freedom of speech is not licentious for nonsensical talks, especially when all of us are grieving as a nation. That is not freedom of speech.
Well, let me acknowledge the presence of, Prof, for example, thank you. Now, Professor Kwesi Ejekum is joining us via Zoom. He is a former Air Force pilot, is an associate professor of aeronautics, and also an aircraft accident investigator. It's a very, very important function of what we are faced with right now. Professor Kwesi Ejekum, former Air Force pilot in the Ghana Air Force, by the way, and also an associate professor of aeronautics and an aircraft accident specialist, joining us via Zoom. Professor Ejekum, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning, and it's my pleasure.
I also want to acknowledge the presence of Jonathan Alwyn is joining us as well. He is currently also a PhD forensic science student with the Florida International University, a former senior staff at the Kwame Nkrumah University of Science and Technology, KNUST, is joining us as well via Zoom from Florida International University, Miami. Good morning to you, Jonathan. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Alfred, and thank you for having me today.
Perfect. And I'll start off with you, Professor Jokum. Now, just for the benefit of understanding the circumstance that we are faced with, to the extent that this is an investigation that is ongoing, how long does a helicopter that has crashed, the investigation into the crash, take? I mean, regardless of the details as we've come to, but if a helicopter crash happens, how long does the investigation take?
Well, Fred, thank you very much for your question. And once again, I usually start my submission by having the bereaved family in our thoughts and in our prayers. I know that very soon it looks like life will become normal, but they are still grieving. So we are still with them. We are still thinking about them. We are praying with them. So that's just on the record. Well, talking about, like I've submitted earlier, aircraft accident investigation, it's a thorough and evidence-driven process. And so just like in any scientific undertaking, I know time sometimes can be what we call the stopper, and resources available can sort of truncate the process. But then, because in this case, it's a military investigation, I think I submitted earlier that if it had been a civil investigation, then most of the time to be bound by the International Civil Aviation Organization Annex 30 standards and recommended practices, so that within the next 30 days, there will be a preliminary hearing or release by the investigator in charge where factual evidence will be presented to the public. And what do I mean by factual evidence? We are talking about things that it seemed in fact. What was the mission of the flight or the purpose of the flight, the crew detail, things regarding their certification, their currency. We'll talk about the aircraft itself, its the various components, the engine make, the aircraft type, the number of hours that the aircraft has flown, the last time it was maintained, all those are factual. Air traffic, communication, whether it was under surveillance, would look at things like the weather that prevailed at that particular point until the last known interaction between the crew and air traffic controller. So these are established where the occurrence took place. And then the investigator would let us know that the process is still ongoing. And hopefully in a year's time, if everything is wrapped up and we have enough evidence or we've collected enough data to be able to zone in on probable causes and contributory factors, which will help us to be able to come up with the most appropriate safety recommendation or recommendations for safety, will submit the report. In this case, it's a military investigation. The Ghana Air Force has what we call the Ghana Air Force Flying Operation Standards and the Ghana Air Force Aviation Standards. And there is no particular time bar, because what is happening is that the preliminary investigation team has been to the field. They've done their preliminary field assessment or analysis. They've looked at the wreckage. They've done the staking, the crash dynamics, the energy assessment of what probably might have taken place, the capture marks. They've taken photography. Some of the parts have been recovered. Remember, the terrain is not the best. I mean, it's quite an austere and hostile high ground. And so the aim will be, as much as possible, if you can retrieve most of the aircraft wreckage and bring it down to the hangar to do what we call reconstruction. That would be good. If we cannot, we'll take pictures. I know the first responders, the folks who got there earlier, there were videos. Most, the investigator in charge will be interested to get all those videos. They will do some interviews. They will get the maintenance records of the aircraft. And then, of course, they will look at, like I stated earlier, the physiological and psychological state of the crew. They will look at Ghana Air Force, our standards, our levels of compliance, and just make sure that they've assembled all this data, because we have organizational influence. We'll look at levels of supervision, preconditions for the flight. If there were some unsafe things, we call it unsafe actions. So things related to training, equipment, was it appropriate for the flight? And then, of course, we'll zone in on the operators themselves. What was the state of mind? And that normally comes by looking at things like fatigue. And so the amount of data that has to be collected by accident investigators, which will be handed over to what we call a board of inquiry. And they will look at all the data and, based on that, the findings will determine the causal and contributory factors. I cannot, make a prediction as to whether it will be done in 30 days or in 2 weeks or maybe in 4 months. It's a process that is ongoing. But hopefully, since we are tied almost to Annex 13, I am, in my opinion, envisaging that within a year's time, we should be able to almost zone in on most probable causal and contributory factors.
Within a year, all things being equal?
All things being equal, crossing my hand, hopefully we should be able to get this wrapped up.
I see. And when you talk about a year, there has to be appeal for a lot of patience, because this is a meticulous process. That is, it's a factual process, data-driven, flight data recorder. You talk about the cockpit voice recorder, documentary analysis, as you have referenced, interviews that will be done, and the entire process in the midst of the questions, and you see that sense of impatience. People want answers, but at this point, we have to also temper that with a lot of patience. That's what you say, isn't it?
Yes, please. I understand. I know everybody, we want answers now and now and now. But unfortunately, investigators, I get it, the emotions, the anxiety. But one characteristic of every good investigator is that we try to filter out the noise, and then we look at the body of evidence, the corpus of evidence, and then we sift through, and also what we have available to us. The good thing is that the flight data recorder was retrieved from the site. That is just one part of the investigation. Sometimes people get it's conflated. Oh, we have the flight data recorder, so everything is, we are done. No, the flight data recorder only allows us to probe the various flight parameters that the aircraft was able to gather: the altitude, the speed, the location, the engine parameters, the cockpit voice, and in fact, for most standard flight data recorders, they're able to give us about 88 parameters. Okay, so geographical point, the last known point, everything will be captured. Cockpit voice recorder will give us an idea about the information flow on the flight deck, and if there were any alerts on the flight deck, if there were any acoustic patterns within the flight deck area. We will try to match all this together. We will triangulate the information with the interview. Even with the interviews, we have to ensure that there is logical consistency and trustworthiness from what we are getting. So we might go back to folks that we've interviewed earlier based on the factual evidence that maybe you're getting from the flight data recorder or from the field, and reinterrogate them again, the same questions. We want to see that logical consistency, because eyewitnesses sometimes are not the most credible, and so you want to interrogate it and keep going back to it. And once we've done that, we assemble all of them, investigators sit down, we have some hypotheses that we've lined up. Those that the evidence doesn't validate, we take it to the side, and we eventually arrive at maybe a set of hypotheses that is strongly validated by the evidence or the data that we've collected. And it is out of it that we'll be able to hone in on causal and contributory factors. And then eventually we make the safety recommendations, which are pragmatic, which are cost-effective, based on the resources and the constraints that we are faced with, to be able to help the Ghana Air Force to be able to improve their operations. Sometimes we might find certain information which is safety critical that needs to be addressed immediately. And so in that case, what we do is that we immediately tell the Air Force commander, hey, we've identified this, maybe it has to do with some abnormalities with the technical state of the aircraft. I'm not saying that's what happened now. And so there needs to be an immediate resolution of it. An airworthiness directive will be issued in collaboration with the manufacturer, and then we make sure fleet-wide that is done. If it has something to do with our procedures and policies, that needs to be addressed immediately. It is sent to higher command. It is, issued, it percolates down to the various squadrons, and then maybe through training or changes in procedure, those are implemented immediately whilst the investigation goes on and we await the final report.
How much of leverage would be put on the eyewitness account or eyewitnesses account of what happened? Because a lot of reference has been made to some of the residents in this community, Brofiedu area, saying they saw this helicopter flying at a very low altitude. Then an MP references another eyewitness saying it blasted in the air and so on. How much reference and reliance will be put on eyewitness reports in this entire investigation process?
Thank you very much. So, like I stated earlier, our eyewitness accounts, hey, they are just one part of the tapestry that we are weaving. Okay, they are one data point, and I've stated earlier that they tend not to be the most credible. So what we do is that, they saw the aircraft flying low. What do you mean by low? How do you guesstimate low? And so that is where maybe like the information that we extract from the flight data recorder would validate whatever if numerous eyewitnesses were saying, we think that we estimate that it was flying so low that I could see maybe a high ground and the aircraft seems to be below maybe the highest peak of the high ground. Then we go to the flight data recorder, which will capture at that point, we'll ask them, at what time did you see it? It was at maybe 8:55, around 8:55. Remember, the flight data recorder has what we call timestamps. So we check at 8:55, what did the flight data recorder come up with? It will say that the aircraft was flying at 850 feet. Make the mountain is 1,000 and 1,100 at that particular geographic location. So then we realized that there is a possibility that what the eyewitness was saying compared to what is captured, which is factual data from the flight data recorder, estimating that at that geographic position, at that particular timestamp, the aircraft was at this speed, was at this altitude. So it makes sense. It is plausible. So somehow, in terms of trustworthiness, in terms of authentication, they are almost correlated. And that's how we sort of assess eyewitness account. If there was an explosion, like I've stated earlier, normally in-flight breakups due to an explosive event, they are the telltale capture signs, even from the wreckage itself. One of the things that investigators will be looking at, everything is on the table. So obviously, if there is suspected sabotage, they will analyze the wreckage for what we call forensic explosive debris. Okay, that will be tested. I know my colleague here, the forensic analyst, is here. We check it, and we want to rule out sabotage, because if there was an explosive event, then the investigation might shift to a criminal investigation. because it's a potentially criminal act, and that has to be dealt with by maybe the Ghana Armed Forces, military police, CID, BNI. They will have to come in. So once we've ruled that out, we've tested, and there's no sign of explosive chemical residue. If there was an explosion, in-flight explosion, even the wreckage diagram, the spread of the wreckage, will give us an idea. And the last point is the cockpit voice recorder. Normally, if there's an in-flight explosion, such that, remember, helicopter in this case is not too highly pressurized. Okay? But then, even the acoustic sound signature or pattern, when we take it to the lab, we know how the normal acoustic sound of maybe a Z9 helicopter should pan out when we put it in a software and we are viewing it acoustically and visually. So if there was an in-flight breakup, you realize that at the point of the explosion, of course, the acoustic signal is going to show some excessive peak, which is consistent with such an event. And that is how we are able to either rule out or to be able to consider it as a potential cause and add it to our analysis.
I see. So at the starting point of the investigation, all possibilities are on the table. You don't rule out anything.
Everything is on the table for the accident investigator. Your hat is on. All biases are to the side. We consider everything. We keep ruling it out based on the strength of the evidence. Everything is on the table.
How has that act of moving the debris from its original position, I mean, we saw the residents take some parts of it home. In fact, there's been an appeal, a cash reward for them to return it. Has that compromised the investigation at the crash site in any way? Or there could be remedial measures?
Well, yes. I mean, in the ideal world, I've stated it earlier that we want the crash site to be secured. We don't want folks to tamper with. And one of the key information we want to send out to the public is that an aircraft crash site is hazardous. Not because, even for the first respondent, anytime you have metals, especially aircraft components, post-crash fire, burning aircraft components, there are some physical and chemical changes that takes place. And especially if you have parts that are composite, materials. These composite material, even touching it with your hands, just bare hands, it could potentially be, have an effect on the individual touching it. There could be sharp points that will cut an individual. And so we want to appeal to these people that, hey, these are a potentially hazardous component that you've taken home. You don't want it to later lead to you, getting ill or something because you touch. There might be biohazards, and the whole site itself, it's not something that should be handled just like that. As investigators, we go there with biohazard suits and stuff based on the components that got burnt. Some metals, when they burn, you don't want to be touching them like that. We will still appeal to those who have taken part that, hey, we want you to bring it back. We understand, yes, sometimes we are curious, we want to take things away. I think criminalizing it may not be helpful. Rather, incentivizing it might be the better idea. Incentivize it, tell them that, hey, if you took something, you bring it back. I mean, we have an incentive for you so that we get everything back. And then if we have to do a physical reconstruction of the helicopter in the hangar, we have most of the components. On the other hand, there might be components that will be way out in the forest that's scattered that we'll never be able to find it. But guess what? We will be able to have enough from the flight data recorder and the remaining wreckage and the documentary analysis and the interviews and the pilot's record, medical records, psychological analysis based on interviews with colleagues, standard operating procedures, to be able to at least develop a plausible theory or hypothesis, and then out of it come up with causal and contributory factors. So if we get all the parts, that is fine. But if you are not able to get everything, that doesn't mean that investigators can still not go ahead and be able to do a thorough and comprehensive data-driven job.
Professor Jokum, great stuff. And there's a reference that you keep making to the data that has to be used to drive this investigation, which you say we have to be patient, all things being equal, within 1 year, all things being equal, we would get to know what the outcome of the investigation is. But Kenna, with what was retrieved from this crashed Z9 helicopter, was it a black box as we know it, or as you know it?
Well, what I've been told is that probably per the manufacturer is designated as an anti-crash recorder.
Anti-crash recorder.
But technically, the anti-crash recorder has two composites. It's got a cockpit voice recorder, then it's got a flight data recorder. So in a way, it is still a black box, except that the manufacturer says that this is an anti-crash recorder. Okay. I'm also told that that particular anti-crash recorder or black box only records the last 30 minutes before an incident.
The last 30 minutes?
So we're not going to get the data from takeoff 0912, but we're going to get the data 30 minutes before impact, which is still critical, still significant, you know.
I see.
But I'm told that there are differences in these flight recorders. And this particular model is about 30 minutes.
You record what happened.
Recorded data.
30 minutes before the crash.
Before the crash.
What kind of data is recorded in there? Is it the interaction between the
Prof has
pilot?
explained, he called it parameters, flight parameters. So the azimuth or the bearing, the altitude, above mean sea level, the speed of the aircraft, and so on and so forth.
I see.
You know, the state of the engine, how well the engine was functioning.
Right.
Anything connected with the performance of the aircraft will be on that material. Plus the conversations in the cockpit. Let's assume that the minister was invited, one of them, to come to the cockpit, and the captain can do that. That conversation will be captured. Right. When the Ocansey mayor said on a certain platform that I was with, that he was saying that somebody at Obuasi has spoken with my namesake, Dr. Samuel Abuaji. Now, if that person went and spoke with a pilot about the information that, or if Dr. Abuaji had gone to the pilot to convey that information, that would also be on the flight data recorder. You know, and I've suggested that that person or the Ocansey mayor should tell the person to go to the investigator and tell them that we spoke with somebody on the flight. The time, as Dr. is saying, Prof is saying, that time will suggest that at that time the plane was good to fly.
Because the reading was that it said the conversation between them lasted 16 seconds, and that Samuel Abuaji, that's
well, even on his phone.
Deputy NADMO coordinator.
Yeah, on his phone at Obuasi, the record will be there. That's so and so time you called this number. We can retrieve some of that information even from NTN or Vodacom. But the MC, whoever should make available the information, including the phone, you know, to aid the investigations.
See, now, Prof. Jonathan, Dr. Jonathan, I beg your pardon. That's why I bring you in. What kind of forensic analysis beyond the DNA that we have seen establishing the identities of the persons who died in this? Beyond that, what forensic investigation would or should take place to establish other reasons or suspicions that led to this particular crash? If you could sit up a bit for me.
Oh, thank you, Alfred. Yeah, so just continuing from our previous conversation, you know, I've mentioned we're trying to make use of digital forensics.
If you could sit up a bit for me, Doc. And if you could tilt to the... Yes, perfect. Please, you can go ahead. Yes.
Thank you. So I was saying, just continuing from our previous communication, I'd mentioned digital forensics, right? So the prof has made the job easier for me. He has literally said most of the things I wanted to say. But looking at the situation we have at hand, as long as forensics is concerned, the crash scene has been damaged, and it's going to make the work difficult for forensic investigators. But of course, the clue to maybe unraveling what caused the crash probably doesn't lie with only just the forensics. So this is what I think we can do, right? We can apply some digital forensics here. And one of the digital forensic technologies, I think, is drone mapping. And in forensics, we call that photogrammetry. With drone mapping, it allows you to enlarge the perimeter of the scene, right? And yeah, it allows you to enlarge the perimeter of the scene. Remember that if anything caused the plane to crash, let's say, apart from just a natural fall that it exploded on impact, but let's say it's an attack, right? You are not going to have traces of those evidence right at where the incident occurred or at the immediate crash scene. You need to expand everything to enlarge the perimeter of the scene just so you can have a good picture of what went on. And in situations like this, we always make use of drone mapping. And because this will give you a 3D model of the wider debris field, right? So that you can capture everything that is there. And if you look at the slides I sent you, that is just an example of how drone mapping is done. So it allows you to capture 3 strikes, right? Some of the scars even on the ground and some remaining fragment parts that even on a normal day you would not see. Then when you put that together, that also allows you to draw certain conclusions. Right, Alfred, the other thing I think is, Prof had mentioned something. You know, there is this guy whom they interviewed who was at the scene first. Now, we needed to do what we call a debris field geometry analysis, DFG analysis. When you get to the scene fresh and nobody had touched anything, that would have been a fantastic opportunity for forensic investigators to be able to start. It was going to give them a lot of information. So anytime we lose the scene, the original scene, there are alternative layers. And that is maybe if we get a video, the guy who got to the crash site first, if he took a video before touching anything or before anybody touched anything, he should make that video available to the investigators. It's going to help them very well. So an original video here can also be used to reconstruct and remap the crash site. And Alfred, I'm thinking of another thing. You know, every moving object, right? Let me say, every flying object, you can obtain an information from it. That is a fact. You can use video from a flying object, especially a flying object with vibrations. You can use a video of that object to obtain information from it. So in digital forensics, you do what we call audio frequency analysis, where if residents had taken certain videos minutes before the helicopter crashed, this will also be helpful for the investigators because they can extract a lot of information from it. You can examine the frequencies that were present during that operation of the aircraft at that time, because there are a lot of techniques you can use when you have that video. You can do, I think we have a technique we call motion magnification, where you zoom into the video to get some of the vibrations. And then that gives you an idea of some of the structural vibrations that were happening, the noise of the engine, and even bits of radio communication. So all I'm trying to say is video of the aircraft minutes before the incident would also be helpful, and the kind of analysis you need, the frequency analysis, which is a standard analysis that people do, because it helps you to understand the dynamic behavior of the aircraft before the incident happens. And of course, from the digital perspective again, I don't know if phones were found, smartwatches were found, or SD cards or memory devices were found. Now in forensics, we don't leave anything out, right? Because anything can be a clue. And let me just give this example. You can you will agree with me that if you are in a flight, if you're in a plane up there, and usually if you are experiencing a turbulence, you see a lot of things happen, right? You will see that some people will hold their seats tightly. Others will shout, forgive me for this. Others will shout, Jesus, do this one for us. At the same time, you're going to see some people may recording the scene, right? So if in the unlikely event this plane goes down and this phone is retrieved, that video is going to be a lead for the forensic investigators. So all I'm saying is if the residents have picked or we have traces of some of these electronic devices, it's going to help. So from the forensic perspective, looking at what we've lost so far, what I think we can do, drone mapping is going to help us to obtain a lot of information, see things that we cannot see, and also we can do audio frequency analysis if we're able to get hold of videos of the aircraft before it fall, the incident, because this is going to give us some.
You say that the accident scene has been damaged, at least because of that act of the residents taking some of the parts of this crashed helicopter home and so on. Is there any remedy to that? Because the reconstruction of the accident scene is also part of the entire investigation process, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I mean, the drone remapping I'm giving you, that is a digital procedure to help to reconstruct the crash site. And also, if you get the original video, you know, the original video or the video before the place was messed up with, right? That is going to give you a fair idea of how everything was at a place before anything happened. And that is also going to help you. And I said you can also do impact physics, right? With impact physics analysis, you want to look at tree strikes, right? You want to use a drone to look at whether there are some strikes on the tree. Now, based on the intensities of the strike, it can give you a fair idea of the energy or the momentum with which the blades or any part of the helicopter had struck or had stricken those trees, something like that.
I see. Now, Professor Abaje, earlier, Professor Jakum indicated that the state of mind of the operators of the aircraft is critical as well in investigating an aircraft accident. In this instance, yesterday we heard the late Wing Commander Anal's wife say that
the squadron leader.
Now is squadron leader, pardon. He indicated that now he, over the last 2 months, had taken the Z9 that crashed as his baby, studying it to understand how it works, and then also mastering it. You know the qualification and how much of an experience this pilot had garnered over the period. How would that also play in the scheme of things, especially looking at the state of mind of the operators of the aircraft, as Professor Jakum referenced?
Yeah. Well, I think both of them, Professor Jakum and Dr. Tubi Entry, have both spoken to that. Let me start from the skills, the qualifications of the crew. Because initially, some of the statements being bandied around was that a squadron leader was not, competent, was not competent to fly, a president, this and that, which is far from the truth. As of the 6th, squadron leader Anala was the most competent Z9 helicopter pilot, VIP, classified, category C. So he was competent to fly a VIP mission, even if the president had been on
that flight.
Now, I've got information that on the 24th of July, which is not too far away from 6 August, Squadron Leader Anala and the crew and other Air Force officers, including the base commander at Takrady, were sitting in a room. Now, what were they doing? They were discussing air crash, investigations, forensics, the psychology of, that was precisely what I was doing.
I see.
Anala gave a presentation on aircraft investigation. Now, Anala is a certified air crash investigator, trained at Cranfield University, returns to Cranfield every year to lecture foreigners about air crash investigation. So Anala, granted that he was a squadron leader, now a wing commander, does not in any way suggest that he was not competent to fly. 3 of them put together have a collective skill set of 32 years plus. The 3 who were, flying the We know from social media, probably, that Anala has lost a sister in March, was buried by another brother who is a reverend minister in the States in June or July. And then, those who are interested in, religious, spiritual matters, Anala himself follows on the 6th. Now, whether the 2 losses of his siblings had affected him in any way or not, the investigations will try to go into that. Now, where he lives, or where he lived, I've got, the location. I've got a picture of him sitting in the house, a rented house at Teshi. The investigators will go there to find out how congenial the place was for a presidential pilot to be living in a rented house, the kind of house and the environment and so on. So like Professor Ajekum and the Dr. Entry to be are saying, the investigations are going to delve into a lot more. Personally, given that he had flown on the 2nd from Takoradi to Accra, I have no reason to think that he was in a certain state of mind or he was so exhausted, so tired that he probably couldn't fly this mission. By the way, the Air Force have something they call aeronautical decision-making. Professor Jambo calls one of his staff, I want you to go A, B, C, D. The person is at liberty to say, oh, Prof, I beg you, my wife is not well. I want to take time to do so and so. But if the person accepts, the decision to plan the mission, fly the mission, control the mission, land at the designated place is the responsibility of the pilot, aeronautically, with no interferences from anywhere. The only people who can interfere will be air traffic control, an Air Force base, to say that and that, this and that. And, because he was flying controlled. Visual, as I said, it's special visual flight rules. So Air Force Base and the tower at Accra could, give him, or even Kumasi, could tell him to do certain things or not to do certain things. But nobody else, the ministers on the flight, those on the ground at Obuasi, nobody else could take any decision and ask him to change and go and land here. In fact, if he had reached Obuasi, the practice, he would have circled Obuasi, where he had been before, but still circled to find out where Longclay Sports Stadium is, where they said he must now change to somewhere else, I don't know, before he is sure that, okay, I'm going to land at this place or that. I want Ghanaians to, believe that it's not the devil who came, and caught him, whatever it is, or the sabotage is possible. Fortunately, Sikama is not like Boku, excuse me. If this plane had crashed at Boku, one of the assumptions would be that it was brought down, it could have been brought down by hostile fire. So as early as possible, as Prof said, they will eliminate this conspiracy theory of somebody firing at the plane. But if indeed they find evidence that it was brought down, then they will dig further into that. And that probably will be the angle where he said the BNI, NIB, all these people will get on the ground and CID, put their ears to the ground and see whether they can hear anything. Ghanaians, the team, Wing Commander Anala was very, very competent and skilled to fly that plane. And that he might not have been so overwhelmed by flying that he couldn't take the right decisions or whatever it is. But everything else will still be confirmed by the investigators.
I see. And Mr. Banto, still from this perspective, because you hear the Deputy Defense Minister talk about the investigation being made public so the citizens or the public gets to know every step of the way what happened. Now we are learning that all things being equal, it could be a whole year period. That's all things being equal, it could be more. How should the citizens be carried along to understand that in as much as we are asking for answers immediately, we want to know what's happening, the meticulous nature of this investigation would have to necessarily take some time?
That's a matter of trust. If citizens trust their government, trust their state officials, and also given a number of things, it will be easy to accept some of those things. And trust is earned. Question is whether we've created that situation where our people trust us. Like Kenal just said, if this happened around, trust is earned. Question is whether we've created that situation where our people trust us. Like Kenal just said, if this happened around Boku, you will hear even more conspiracy theories. And some of it can be understood.